All right. Good evening. It's not Friday, but some events definitely necessitate an update before Friday. There was a trial at 26th and Cal that concluded this afternoon for Officer Veronica Murillo, who was the victim of an aggravated battery and attempted murder by a subject who was high on PCP in October of 2016. Uh, I'm somewhat happy to announce, at least, that the offender was found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated battery and 2 counts of resisting, but they did not get a guilty verdict for the attempted murder charge. Sentencing will be sometime in May. Stand by for what that ends up being. I will say many people will remember that incident. Officer Murillo will never return to duty. She has a traumatic brain injury from that incident that will definitely change the rest of her life indefinitely. It just highlights how quickly a simple routine incident that many of us dealt with on a daily basis sometimes with some knucklehead who's just being combative or non-compliant turns ultra-violent in a split second, and it changes an officer's life. You know, the reality is then Superintendent Johnson said that Murillo would have been justified in shooting that offender in that scenario in fear of her own life. People need to remember that standard, in fear of your own life or great bodily harm. Officer Murillo articulated that part of her hesitancy was the Laquan McDonald shooting, and that she didn't want to be scrutinized like Jason Van Dyke did for that shooting and second guessed. That is a recurring theme as we go forward here about officers not wanting to be second guessed because everybody is second guessed. That parlays into my second point here. It's expected tomorrow or in the next day or two, video will be released of a shooting in the 16th district a few weeks ago of an 21-year-old offender that was shot and killed by the police. We know already what the spin is going to be, what certain people in the community, even some politicians, are going to try and make this out to be, because the offender was struck in the back with gunfire. The reality is, and the video will show, that the offender was known to the police because the day before he had taken off from the police in a vehicle. And since we can't really do vehicle pursuits, they had to let him go. But they absolutely knew he was the driver. They had previously gotten into an incident with him when he was in a domestic with the mother of his child, where I'm told that he was threatening to kill her, and that ended up in a foot chase too, where he was arrested by the same officer. So the offender was clearly known as a problem child to the police, no doubt. That being said, the night in question, they see him on foot. They go to stop him to talk to him about the car the day before. He flees on foot, drops the bags that he had, and starts running, grabbing his side, and at some point removing a gun from his waistband. The officer giving chase can clearly see the weapon as he's closing the distance on the offender. The offender rounds a corner and starts running up a block and actually slips and falls on a front lawn, which allows the officer to close the gap even further. By the time the offender gets up and starts running again, he readjusts course, turning to his left in the direction of where the officer's coming around the corner. The officer, with the gun in plain sight, fears that the offender is going to turn and start firing on him because that's the motion he was making. So he starts firing at the offender as he tactically moves to his left to try and go to cover along the parked cars to his left. There is nothing wrong with this shooting just because the bullets struck the offender from behind. There's nothing saying the bullets have to be from the front. You can easily, and I challenge anybody who thinks otherwise, to stand behind me, or anybody for that matter, with a gun. And if you don't think someone could just stick their arm backwards and shoot backwards, all it takes is one shot. Our officers are not obligated, again, I'll say it 1,000 times, to sustain gunfire or gunshot wounds in order to return fire. All you need is the fear of bodily harm or death to you or someone else in order to take action. This officer clearly was in fear of being shot when he fired upon the offender, striking him. It is 100% good shooting. But we know what the narrative is going to be and what the knee-jerk reaction is going to be about throwing the officer under the bus. It's important for the public to at least try and look at these videos with an open mind and not from a Monday morning quarterback perception. You know, as I started this conversation with Officer Murillo, how quickly things can change. We do not have to be attacked first in order to take action. We can take preemptive actions to restrict somebody from attacking us, whether with a gun or any other weapon, including their hands. This incident went down the way it did. We support this officer's actions. The department has supported this officer's actions. The public is going to be, I'm guessing, a little different story, because sadly, there's going to be politicians throwing this officer under the bus and calling for his hide. But just know that the FOP is never going to just say okay to a narrative because a politician, COPA, the mayor, or any even law enforcement official says otherwise. The rules of engagement are very clear. This officer followed them, and again, I just would caution anybody to lower the rhetoric and just concentrate on the facts and take the emotion out of the equation. With that being said, I don't know how long this day off thing's going to go or how much it's going to expand. We don't have much more information than you do, to be quite honest with you, which is sad but true. Much of it is anticipation, I guess, of the North Carolina video to be released, along with, I'm guessing this body cam is going to be released similarly, either tomorrow or the next day. So the concerns, I'm guessing, stem from that. If I know any more, we'll certainly release it. But with that, have a safe, enjoyable Tuesday night. It's warm weather, and we know what that usually means. To the officers, thank you for all you do. Keep up the hard work. And if you know these officers, please reach out to them and just show them some support. These are traumatic incidents that affect their psyche for the rest of their life, and mess with their heads. And they need all the support and brotherhood and sisterhood that we can give them. So thank you. Have a good night.